Well, it looks like you and I are going to get a bite of winter starting tomorrow. Ooh, but that's cold. We've been talking about the fiery furnace, and that's hot. And so maybe it makes us a little bit more thankful for the cold to come. I guess we're going to get snow and like double-digit cold. So
that's a good way of looking at it.
Ooh, yeah, I'll take that over the furnace, I guess. Let me just share some stats with you to start with this today, because we want you to be stronger. And but it's good to actually know that while we live in an exceptional time of challenge, there's a lot of furnaces for people. I'm going to give you some stats, some Alberta stats to start with on the latest MNP Consumer Debt Index. And here are some stats from that. 25% of Albertans say they're technically insolvent, unable to pay their bills and debt repayment obligation each month. 37% of Albertans said they're $200 or less away from being insolvent at month end. 46% said they're worried about their current level of debt. 46% said they're still worried that either themselves or someone in their household could lose their job. 51% said they regret the amount of debt they've taken on in life. Now that's a furnace.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are in that kind of furnace in our own home province.
Yeah.
But if you really want some not so much more encouraging news, the rest of Canada is largely worse.
Yeah.
And let me give you some stats from that. In BC, 3 in 10 British Columbians say they cannot pay their bills each month, the most of any province. Ontario, almost half of Ontarians are $200 or less away from insolvency and cannot pay their bills each month. Saskatchewan, more than half of Saskatchewan and Manitoba residents are $200 or less away from insolvency at month end, the highest compared to other provinces. Nova Scotia, over half of Nova Scotians are $200 or less away from insolvency, cannot pay their bills each month. New Brunswick, over half of New Brunswickers are $200 or less away from insolvency, cannot pay their bills each month. Newfoundland, over half of Newfoundlanders are $200 or less away from insolvency, cannot pay their bills each month. Prince Edward Island, over half of Prince Edward Islanders are $200 or less away from insolvency, cannot pay their bills each month. Manitoba, we did already. Quebec, half of Quebecers are $200 or less from insolvency at month end. That's a 10-point jump since June, largest jump compared to other provinces. Look, that tells me there's a lot of people in furnaces.
Yeah.
And they're not there, all of them, with the fourth man.
Right.
As Christians, we go through furnaces.
We do.
And some of you might be in this type of furnace. And it might be a relational furnace that this pressures up and brings on. It can bring their anxiety furnace up so high. This is times that the furnaces are all around us, basically. Yeah. And you as a Christian have the privilege of that fourth man, Jesus. And we talked about who that really is. And he's with us in that, which is really incredibly powerful.
Huge.
But it's also something that God uses in your life to testify to others. So today I'm going to read you some scriptures, and we're going to focus on Nebuchadnezzar's response. Because this is something that God can use your life to bring to others. And God doesn't do things just for one reason. He's going to walk with you through things, but he's also doing it to do and further his work all around you. Take a listen to these scriptures as I read from verse 26 through 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and the royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own." Well, okay, here's the setup. So they're in the fire, they're walking around. Nebuchadnezzar is the one that has the huge heart change.
Yeah.
He's looking at this, and when they come out, all these, and they're all, by the way, in layers of authority. They start with the satraps and work their way down. Yeah. They're all crowding around, and they're checking their clothes, the smells, everything, and they just, like, the miracle is stunning. But like we said, the most impactful thing was that fourth man. Mm-hmm. And that's the one that Nebuchadnezzar focused on. Mm-hmm. He's focusing on that in his response. The others are smelling the clothes and all that. Nebuchadnezzar focuses on that fourth man. How do we know that? Because he goes with this, guys. He says, "Praise be to the God."
Wow.
That's his first words.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's the one who had the most to lose, the most to gain, whatever, in this whole scenario. He was the one who could have just been completely ashamed, embarrassed, whatever. He could have played it anyway. So for those to be the first words, for that to be the testimony that comes out of his mouth immediately, that's huge. It's really huge. It's not political.
No.
You know, there's some political stuff in his motives, I'm sure, but this ultimate praise, this immediate praise, that wasn't political. That was sincere. That was genuine.
Yeah, and the whole reason that they're even there in the first place, the whole reason for the furnace and this whole situation was because he wanted people to praise him originally, right?
That's how praise worked for him. Yeah, it was always this very circular thing. He put out things, built relationships around the idea that praise would come back to him. And like you said, that was this whole statue. He wanted to be God. He wanted this praise. That was his life.
Yeah, you're gonna praise and worship this statue, but really it's me that you're worshiping.
Right. Yeah. And
circular praise is a good phrase.
Yeah.
We're coining a new phrase, right?
We're coining a phrase.
Circular praise. Yeah. Like, that was Nebuchadnezzar's world. Mm-hmm. Like, everything he did was to seed a circular praise back to him.
Yes.
And I think we have to understand something, folks. You may not be the ruler of the world.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of Nebuchadnezzar in you, as we all do.
Yeah.
That this is where we also can just be about circular praise. We seed out things to get that circle coming back to us.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And that's, we want to complete that circle. We come back and they lavish the praise that we've initiated.
Right. Yeah. It's a perversion of I think our nature is that we do have praise wired into us. And so then when sin comes in, this sin nature, it gets down to this circular praise, right? That's how it kind of gets perverted.
Yeah, we act like it's about something else or someone else that we're praising, but it's really comes back to us.
Yeah. And I think we position ourselves in certain relationships in order to have this circular praise, right? You kind of build it into your relationships, you build it into your storytelling, and maybe not really consciously a lot of the time, but that's that sin nature, right? It's building myself up.
I think that's the big one. Storytelling is you can tell a story and only highlight certain parts that make you look good, or you can talk about a certain situation and leave the most important thing out, but it's just about what you were doing. And
so you have to really look at your motivation, right? Like, the motivation is the key. If I'm paying someone a compliment, but the motivation in a sense is to turn it back to myself, then what was the point, right?
And then what's the difference?
Yeah.
Really, between Nebuchadnezzar's actions and in our own?
Absolutely.
Because we're using the same methodology.
Yeah.
And so on with it. And but in this case, I admire this king's response, because his whole world has been circular praise.
Yes.
And now he goes linear.
Yeah.
And this is why we know it wasn't for him about going and smelling their clothes. This was about linear praise to God, where it was, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where he for the first time in his life,
that's right,
went linear with his praise to a God greater than him.
Yes.
That's an amazing moment.
It's unreal. Huge. Yeah, there was a submission that was made. He's still, there's still work to be done. He didn't say, he didn't personalize it as his own God. It's the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. There's still a journey to be had, and as we'll continue to discover. But that is the first time
he recognized that there's a God higher than me.
Yeah. We talked before about how in Neb's world it was always looking down, right? And this is sort of that, he's looking up.
Yeah, and even all the gods that they had believed in and worshipped, it was still all about him. He would manipulate, or the magicians would manipulate what the gods were saying to benefit him. This time it had nothing to do with him. It's just, there is a God.
Yes. Now you might look at this and say, what choice did he have? But he did have a choice. He was political. This was his whole world. He was a very successful king. So he could have changed the dynamics here. He could have politicized it. He could have given it some time, although this is an astounding, true miracle where the laws of nature were suspended. You know how it works, right? If you're political, you can create a new story, create a twist on a story. He could have isolated these guys and given it time, but this was a true submission.
Yeah. And that's how we know is two things. Number one, he starts off saying, praise be to the God. Praise him. And then the second thing is, he promotes these guys within his ranks, within his kingdom, instead of, like you said, isolating them and just sort of, I want it to remain all about me, not about this.
The phrase I'd like to get to on that is, he rescued his servants. That he says that, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. Now let me quote Nebuchadnezzar from just minutes before, when he said this, then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?
This was a total about face.
And, rescue becomes a very important thing when you go into a furnace. You might not know what God can deliver you from the financial furnace. You might not have a lot of confidence right now. It's not confidence, have faith. Your God's with you. If you're a Christian, the fourth man is with you in that fiery furnace. You latch on to him. He's going to bring you out of that fiery furnace. And that fiery furnace, people can see God's action in your life and turn their hearts towards him. Because of God's work in you, he does a work in them.
Yes.
You are a catalyst. And there's no better catalyst than when people can see you in the squeeze, but see your faith rise above the squeeze, and to see your God honored by your faith. That becomes something that can bring out of their mouths the most surprising things. Nebuchadnezzar, yep, there's a God. Nebuchadnezzar, yep, he will rescue. And Nebuchadnezzar, he was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God, which he now admits is greater than him. Go through the fire. You're not alone. Look to Jesus. He'll rescue you. He's going to do a work in others through it.